Hold on tight, this is the most extreme Mini ever. This John Cooper Works GP model is a present that Mini promised itself for its 60th birthday, and it's intended for a very select audience of brand enthusiasts.
So, what might the wildest Mini ever made be like? Well, let's fire it up and find out. A prod on the starter button confirms that this is no ordinary John Cooper Works variant. The engine springing into life with an evocative exhaust chortle. It's clearly track-tuned, but is it fast? No Mini has ever been faster. The 62-mile-an-hour sprint dispatched in just 5.2 seconds. Though you'd hope for that, given that this car has the largest, most powerful engine ever shoehorned beneath the clamshell bonnet of a Mini hatch. Unlike the 1.6-litre units used in the previous two Mini GP models, this one's 2 litres in size, offering a 306 horsepower output. You have to have an 8-speed auto paddle shift gearbox, something that might trouble the kind of audience this wild Mini is aimed at. There's no four-wheel drive system either, something you might think this defiantly front-driven Mini might need when you stamp on the throttle from rest, or even in the mid-range and find the front scrabbling desperately for traction and sometimes even orientation. Yet at the same time, you feel that this is all somehow an integral part of the extreme fairground ride this Uber Mini wants to take you on. It helps that the whole performance is accompanied by various evocative exhaust crackles from the huge 19mm diameter tailpipes during throttle lifts and downshifts, and that some semblance of control, particularly in the wet, is maintained by the standard mechanical differential lock and the dynamic stability control system. Tame it all and simply astonishing point-to-point times over secondary roads are possible. The body structure, chassis and driveline of the standard Mini hatch JCW had to be practically reinvented for this GP version. There's a new engine mount, a stouter front tower, strut brace and a beefier rectangular support for the rear suspension. The brakes are brilliant too, with 360mm discs gripped by 4-piston calipers at the front. Handling changes include special camber rates, a wider track, stiffer anti-roll bars and a greater offset for the bespoke 18-inch forged wheels that come shod with track-style sport performance spec Hankook tyres. Plus the ride height is 10mm lower and the steering is even sharper than it already is on a JCW Mini. Don't worry about having to scroll through different drive modes. This GP model is programmed for sport only, in which it pulls all the way to the 6,800 RPM red line as the gearbox performs its crisp and rapid shifts. Nothing is subtle about this Mini, certainly not the way it looks. Has the brand ever produced anything with more radical racetrack presence? It's doubtful. The first thing you'll notice, of course, is this simply enormous GP-branded rear wing with its subtle lip spoilers and a look apparently inspired by the boxy turbojet housings of the Concorde supersonic aircraft. More subtly altered is the rear valance within the rear bumper, which incorporates these centrally mounted twin tailpipes. At the front, the GP-branded grille has a red bar, there's a red-framed lower air intake, and the slim bonnet vent and the headlamp bezels are framed in black. You get a deeper front bumper than the one on an ordinary JCW hatch, with bigger cooling ducts and a more pronounced lower splitter. At the side, you'll note the 10mm lower ride height, and the fact that this is a 3-door. There are no plans for a GP model with the 5-door body shape. In profile, the biggest change is the incorporation of the much wider wheel arch extensions needed for this extreme variant's wider track. Now, these extensions aren't the car's most stylish feature, but they're apparently fashioned from the same carbon fibre used in construction of BMW's i3. They carry the car's individual build number. This, as you can see, is car number 25. And they house 8-inch wide, 18-inch forged 4-spoke lightweight rims with red GP Centre badges. Inside, it's all equally focused. There's these two brilliantly supportive front sports bucket seats trimmed in Dinamica and leather and fitted with red seat belts. They position you perfectly in front of the grippy 3-spoke race-spec GP Walk Napper wheel, which features a race-style 12 o'clock top marker and GP-branded steering wheel gearshift paddles, manufactured using 3D printing. Otherwise, the cockpit's pretty similar to that of a standard JCW hatch, apart from the adoption of this freestanding GP digital display instrument cluster. The central infotainment screen, which has a special GP screen on startup, is only 6.5 inches in size as standard, but you're probably going to want to upgrade to the optional GP Touring Pack, which gets you this larger 8.8-inch display, complete with navigation and various mini-connected services. As with the two previous generation Mini GP models, the rear bench has been chucked out in the interests of weight saving, as would be the case with a Mini race car. There's just this transverse brace behind the seats finished in chili red. It's actually there to stop luggage sliding forward, but if you want, you can tell your friends that it's a roll cage style structural element. Out back, where this big spoiler makes the tailgate pretty heavy to lift, the main part of the boot is just like an ordinary mini hatch 3-door, which means that it's quite deep but pretty small, this primary area being 211 litres in size. If you're fortunate enough to get a place on the waiting list for this car, you'll be asked for £35,345, but you'll probably want a version of it with the optional GP Touring Pack fitted, which will add another £2,000 to that total. Well over £37,000 for a little mini hatch? Could that ever be justified? You'll need to drive this car to decide that for yourself. You won't care too much about WLTP rated efficiency figures if you're considering this car, but we'll give them to you anyway. The combined cycle fuel figure is quoted at 34.0 miles to the gallon, but if you get anywhere near to that in regular use, we'd venture to suggest that you really shouldn't have bought this car in the first place, and it deserves a better home. You know where I am. The CO2 reading is 189 grams per kilometre. Want an uber-fast hot hatch you could use every day? There are much better choices than this one. Most of them will have 2 extra doors and will ride better. Toyota's GR Yaris has the all-wheel drive and the manual gearbox that this Mini lacks, and a Honda Civic Type R in its more restrained Sportline form will attract less disapproving stares in the car park. On top of that, almost all the things a modern hot hatch isn't supposed to do are startlingly evident in this one. You fight with the steering and battle with torque steer under heavy acceleration. There's waywardness at speed, which requires your full attention, and the ride acquaints you with every tarmac tear. So, why do I still want one of these? Because in almost completely dialing out all of these things, as most competitors have, you also lose something. The raw venom this Mini has, and the challenge you feel from trying to master it. This car's extreme, it's addictive, and there's nothing quite like it.